So, thank you all for coming along. Tonight we're remembering Bhakta Terry. He did 28 years of devotional service here at the Manor and at other temples and with Rath Yatra. And so we've got a few personalities we'd like to say a few words. Have we got? Did you? Okay. Start with senior personalities first. I'll ask Mother Chase, would you like to say a few words?
First, close friends. I'll be somewhere in the middle.
Oh, okay. Of course. Narahari, would you say a few words?
Nobody wants to be first.
Nobody wants to be first.
Go first.
You first. You.
Okay,
yeah,
well,
you first.
I'll say something. I don't know.
Close.
Somehow, kind of ended up being quite close friends with Terry, and it was through Rath Yatra, really. He started helping us in about 1986 or 7, when we used to pack up in Battersea Park in those days. We used to go from the North Carriage Drive, which is the top end of Hyde Park, all the way down Park Lane, through Knightsbridge, Sloane Square, Sloane Street, Battersea Bridge, Battersea Park Road. It was a long Rath Yatra in those days, about 3 hours into Battersea Park. And used to put the Rath cart on that field behind the bandstand in Battersea Park in those days. And quite often, as usually happens with festivals, everyone goes home and you're left to sort of pack up. So Terry was one of these persons who would come and help me when everyone else had gone home. So we'd be working there. And there were no lights in Battersea Park in those days. So after 10 o'clock, the last kirtan would finish, everyone would go home and we'd be sort of packing up in the dark and trying to back the truck underneath the Rath cart to load it up in the dark. And Terry was always there working very hard. He was a really hard worker. So somehow we got closer in those times. And then in '89 I went to Liverpool. And again, the only time I'd see Terry then was on Rath Yatras when we used to come down. And then again he turned up one time. We were doing one of the Rath Yatras in Dublin. It wasn't the first one in 1990. It was about 93. He was living in Ireland for a while. And he showed up at the Dublin Rath Yatra to help me load up at the end of the festival. So then in 93 he started, 94, Shiva Swami asked him to go with me to Hungary. Dushanta, one devotee who used to work and be in charge of the grounds here, he came the first year to Hungary with us. And then after that he couldn't come anymore, he moved to Wales. And so Shiva Swami actually said, Terry should go with you. So under the orders of Shiva Swami, Terry started coming to Hungary with me every year. And so I got to know him very well, because if you're living in the cab of a truck with someone for 3 weeks, you get to know them pretty well. So he actually had a terrific sense of humour. I don't think anybody mentioned that. I'm trying to sort of think of some examples, but I can't seem to think of any at the moment.
Or the tap on the head.
Oh, that, yeah. Yeah, there's one thing, I heard it say it many times over the years. If someone had a sore knee, so if you've got water on the knee, the cure for that is a tap on the head. So that was one of his, one thing used to recur a lot over the years. Yeah, there was strange things. We used to get up to all kinds of things. One time we got marooned in Poland for 2 weeks, because it was 2 weeks before the Woodstock Festival. We'd driven up from Hungary, and it was 2 weeks before they were going to use the English Rath cart in the Woodstock Festival. So we did this Rath Yatra, but we had this 2 week time to spare, so we didn't got anything to do, so we just started taking bits off the Rath cart and sort of polishing them and cleaning them and things. So we had one problem with one of the wheels used to make a squeaking noise, which was driving us mad for a number of years. We had 2 weeks with nothing to do, so we took this wheel off the car and filed down some bits of metal and different things. But the way it worked in the Woodstock Festival, the devotees, they'd hire a school, because in the summer the schools are closed, so they'd hire a school for the devotees to stay in. But they had so many devotees, they had to hire a second school. So they put the band, it was some French reggae band, devotee reggae band, so they put them in the second school. And of course we came late, we'd driven over from Hungary, so they put us in this school as well. And so there was, I don't know, maybe 10 devotees, it was a huge school. But obviously the school had a kitchen, and the kitchen was about the size of this room. And so, you put a load of devotees somewhere with a big kitchen, what are they going to do? So we were sitting there, and the French devotees came in with a big pot of halva one evening, and laid this halva on us. And so we thought, well, what can we... Myself and Terry thought, we better get them back the next night. So we went off around this Polish supermarket buying... We didn't know what the ingredients... We couldn't read what the ingredients were. We had to bring the devotees up from the supermarket to find out what was semolina and what was butter and stuff. So myself and Terry, we made this pot of halva, which you use this kind of recipe where you double the butter and you double the sugar, and it makes it a little more sort of potent. So we made this halva for the French devotees, and they didn't get up the next day. And Sridhar Swami was staying there with us as well, and his servant didn't get up either. So the kind of different things you kind of get up to when you're travelling around. So, it was that festival actually, we had to do this procession around the festival site. There was about 100,000 people there. It was a big festival. So 100,000 people got to see Jagannath. Devotees were all in this cart around the festival site. So it was kind of an internal Rath Yatra. It was within this festival. And then we had to leave that same night because we had to get back for Birmingham Rath Yatra, which was the day after. So we left Poland at 9 o'clock at night, and we had to drive across the rest of Poland, right across Germany and across Holland to get to Rotterdam by 9 o'clock the next morning. And so myself and Terry were just driving all night, taking in turns. So we didn't have to worry about where we were going to sleep because we didn't bother sleeping that night. So many times we were driving across Europe like that. With the London Rath Yatra, Terry was living not far from us because when I moved back from Liverpool in '99, he had got a houseboat down at Croxley, and we sort of moved about 2 streets away. So quite often we just say, Terry, I need some help with some service this evening. Can you give us a hand or something? Kind of knowing full well it was we're going to have some prashadam. So he'd come round, and quite often we'd sit all evening talking about Rath cart design. How we could modify this, how we could modify that. And Terry got an amazingly practical brain. He could see immediately, there's a quicker way, you could do this. You could do this without wasting time here. And so, over the course of a couple of years, the first year we had 3 carts. I think it took us, how long did it take us to pack up in Hyde Park in Trafalgar Square?
3 carts.
The first year, 2004. It was late, wasn't it? We didn't get back till midnight.
Yeah, it was like that, past 11 or something at night.
It was really late. It took us. It took 4 or 5 hours anyway. It took 4 or 5 hours to disassemble the carts, pack them on the trucks, and sort of get out of Trafalgar Square. So over the years we've cut that down. I think was it 3? We knocked 2 hours off it, nearly halved it. Now this year was a little longer because we didn't have Terry. He's usually there, saying, well, you could do this quicker, you two do this, you two do that. And so I think it wasn't as quick as last year, but it was, I think, 3 hours instead of 5, so we cut the time down a lot. And also, assembling them in Hyde Park in the morning, the first year with 3 carts, it took us till late, 10, 11, something like 11. The deities were just almost there, and they hadn't decorated. But now we get there at 6, and by, is it 7:30?
Yeah, 7:30.
7:30 we got all 3 of them up, an hour and a half. So it's half an hour each on average for 3 chariots to get them assembled. So a lot of that is ideas from Terry. One idea he had was we used to take the canopies off and pack them in a box so they didn't get damaged, because they're made of this ripstop nylon. And in order to put a canopy on, it's got a row of brass rings around the top and corresponding holes in the top dome. So you'd lace it on, you'd sit on the top in the middle of the canopy, because it's not up at that time, of course. And then you lace this piece of rope. You have one person on top and one person underneath. And you thread this piece of rope down one hole, up the next, through the canopy, over, down the next. And it would take half an hour to put a canopy on.
And staples on top of that as well.
Yeah, and staples on top for another little bit on the top. And so Terry had this idea. And why don't you get something a bit like a hairnet, like a waterproof hairnet, so you can just detach the canopy at the bottom, bundle it all into the middle, and just put this big stretchy thing over the top, and just leave it on there. So we did that. So that knocked So you're talking about half an hour for each car, so that's an hour and a half saved. So we did that. That was one design. Of course, whenever I told him about it, he would deny it. I didn't do that. It was your idea. And, no, Prabhu, it's your. But that was how he was. He was actually very humble. He was a very humble devotee, very hard-working. And if you needed to be told about something, he would tell you. So, according to our philosophy, that's actually a real friend. A real friend is someone who will point out your faults to you. We just have to be humble enough to accept. That's all. So he was like that. In that sense, he was a real friend. He would tell me. If I needed to be told about something, he would tell me. And I'm very grateful to him for that. So, what else? Another humorous incident happened. This isn't to do with Rath Yatra. One time he phoned me up, and he put a con rod through the side of his engine on his car. He'd blown the engine. At this time he had an ancient Vauxhall Astra. It's probably about 15 years old, this Vauxhall Astra, a white Vauxhall Astra estate. And he was chasing another car had overtaken him, and he didn't like it, so he chased this car through it was on the A1, through the tunnel, the Galleria tunnel. There's a tunnel on the A1 at Hatfield. And he phoned me up. He'd just been towed out of the tunnel because he'd blown his engine out. So he was really getting into the philosophy of this. He was discussing with me, well, I wonder what this is a reaction for. How, what thing have I done that requires the reaction that my car's blown up? Krishna's done this to me, and this, And I said, Prabhu, do you think it's anything to do with the fact that you're driving a 15-year-old engine at 120 miles an hour? Do you think that you possibly just broke it, and that the reaction is for doing that, you've broken your engine? And he said, oh, maybe. So, other things. Okay, I'm going to hold the microphone. There must be some other... Who else have we got on the list? Who's on the list? I'd like to say something. Just a couple of words.
People just didn't want to go first.
Okay, alright, so I've done it. Okay. So who's next then?
Arjuna and Mati.
Well, I've known Terry since about, 1991, 92, when Tatikshu came to Liverpool. I was in Liverpool. Tatikshu recruited me as a devotee and also as a member of the glorious Rath crew, which we see here. And so I was simultaneously involved in Krishna consciousness, the Rath Yatras, because it's not just London Rath Yatra, as Tatikshu was saying, it's all over England and then all over Europe. I only went once to Ireland, but there was always some involvement with Terry. And what really strikes me about Terry is that for one thing, he's like the epitome of how devotional service is eternal, because he was drawn into the joy of devotional service, and he's found his niches with the Rath Yatra and the gardening, because he's a very, very practical person above all else, no nonsense, and he has a unique kind of grumpy sense of humour. Everyone who knows him knows what I'm talking about. So, he'd do things like he'd complain to me about power on the boat, and I'd say, well, me being Mr. Green, why don't you get some solar panels? And he'd say, well, people would steal them because he's being grumpy. And I said, well, just put them inside the boat while you're out at work, and when you get home at night time, you can put them on the boat. Like a typical exchange with Terry, grumpy humour. He'd always be the first one at the workshop. I mean, not the first. Like he and Tushta and Tatikshu there all the time, taking the Rath carts apart and fixing them up and putting them together again in his overalls. And so this eternal devotional service as manifested with Terry, that he came to Krishna consciousness. He came, he saw the Rathayatra service, and he's carried on doing it until the very last. And then, so here he is. And what time does it happen that he leaves? But right in between Snanyatra and Rathayatra, which is a pretty funny coincidence in my book. And so, everyone's mind's occupied with the service of Jagannath and Subhadra and Lord Baladev. And right at that time, in the midst of the two festivals, that's when Terry left his husk, left behind. I wrote a book of all sorts of adventure and nonsense and Illuminati and time travel, teleporting and Krishna consciousness and humour. And he really liked it. He really appreciated the Krishna conscious humour in that book, and he gave me a good review. I put it on the site, and he had this pseudonym, alter identity. He was Thierry somebody. Does anyone know that other name he used? No. But he was a guy with hidden depths, and he always came out on his feet. He was practical above all else, and as Shikshu says, he was always somehow or other thinking of Krishna, doing his service in relation to Krishna, cracking his jokes in relation to Krishna, and being practical in relation to Krishna. Actually, although he wasn't nominally a brahmachari or anything, he lived a fairly austere life of simply really, meeting his basic needs, being Krishna conscious. He didn't have much opulence in his life, except, many people would say living on a canal boat in Hertfordshire, in a lovely spot, and working in this magnificent estate here is actually quite a fantastic lifestyle, because when we serve Krishna, like you serve the king, you get to work in Buckingham Palace. You serve Krishna, you get to live around Bhaktivedanta Manor and so on. So he had a very satisfying life, I think, because he had good people around him, and he had very satisfying service. So I am absolutely certain that he's gone on to bigger and better Rathayatras with a considerably better equipped kitchen than the one in the warehouse at Hatfield, and the full panoply of German machine tools.
So it seems really strange to be sitting here with a picture of Terry. All these years he's been there serving, and we've been serving as a crew. He's one of the lads. And now it's a picture of Terry. It just takes a bit of getting used to. Because he was so much a part of the crew and a part of our family. He was always coming around our house. He was just, I would say, one of the lads, really. It makes you take a check on your own mortality. You think he's one of the lads, or yeah, we know him, he's good at this, or he has a bit of trouble with that. And we forget that one day all of our friends are going to be going back to Krishna. And it's what we do when they're here that counts. And then one day we'll be sitting here saying praises for all our friends, and there'll be a picture of them on a chair. And we'll be thinking, maybe we could have done a bit more, or on the other hand, obviously Krishna said when it was time for him to go back to Godhead or back to Krishna or to Rathayatra, wherever he is. So I was trying to think of something to say. And I tried to write a poem, but I don't know, it's about Terry. He was a servant of Subhadra's cart, so therefore he was the smartest of the smart. He liked to work hard, but he wasn't one who starred. His service always shone, and we miss him now he's gone. For 30 years he steered his way on Subhadra's cart, and you'd hear him say, "Let's get on. You didn't want to wait. Let's get on." Let's take a lesson from his mood. His example is so good. And serve while we can. Let's follow the servant, Lady Subhadra's man. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. For myself, like Chakrnadi, it's kind of like still a bit of a shock actually that Terry's not here anymore, and there's a picture of Terry next to Srila Prabhupada, which is the best place that Terry could possibly be, and that's sitting next to Srila Prabhupada, being remembered. I still almost expect to see him driving around the corner with the lawnmower, or with a bunch of tools in his hand, or his dungarees, or so it's kind of, it'll take a while, I think, also for me to kind of accept that now Terry's moved on in his adventure on his path back to Godhead. I also felt that it was quite a glory. I felt a little bit guilty that I was hearing news almost every day from Jesta about his progress and what was happening with him in hospital and with all the surgery and so on and so forth. And I was travelling here and there, a little bit busy, and then wondering, well, should I come back and go and see Terry? And there'd be reports that he didn't want visitors and so forth. So I thought, well, okay. I didn't know Terry so well. I wasn't so close to Terry, although we knew each other over the years. And on the occasions that I did have chats with Terry, I just found him a very practical, straightforward, straight-talking person who happened to be somehow or other drawn to Krishna consciousness and devotional service. So I just felt that he'd been very fortunate to get this service and to grab it with both hands, particularly his service, for Lord Jagannath and Baladev, and particularly Lady Subhadra. So that's all I really have to say. I always enjoyed our chats. I always found him just a straightforward person, no airs or graces, but he was certainly a very sincere devotee of Krishna. And so I hope to follow his enthusiastic example and keep it simple, have no airs and graces, and somehow keep that attachment, whatever it is, to the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. And Terry, I wish you well. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, the same here. Terry and myself didn't have much interaction as vocally, but it was like every day he would be on the tractor, and every day there'd be a wave, and a wave back, and my daughters have more of an interaction with him, and Mahavidya as well. We went to visit him in the hospital as well a few times when he was up to seeing somebody. Sometimes he couldn't see anybody. I just remember that when we first heard, Terry had a bit of a pain in his side, and next thing we know, he's got only a few months to live. And it was very private. He actually, all the time, he just asked for a few devotees to come, and most of the time he didn't want to have any visitors because he had no energy from the chemo. And but I was in contact with him through text, and I would, when the devotees would send me messages, I would, forward them to him. Sometimes he'd reply, sometimes I just knew he was, and he said he was too weak for visitors at that time. And he asked Gandharvika and Subrata to come and visit, and he then said he would like, and I hadn't sent a message out in detail what was happening, but then he said to Gandharvika that he would like a message to the devotees, for prayers, and he thanked the devotees for all their prayers, and he was overwhelmed with how many devotees were actually, thinking and praying for him and visiting him. So I had respected that he didn't want any visitors, but on Sunday, on the 2nd of June, I got a text from Shruti saying he's deteriorating quite rapidly. So I texted back, can anybody go? So he said, yes, it's all, anybody can go now. So I had to go pick Pratima up, who was coming to sew for the deities from Watford Junction. And as she arrived, I said, do you want to go see Terry? So it was about 1:30. And she said, let's go. And so we went to the hospital. And we were there about 1:45. And we had an hour. He was very struggling breathing at that time. He seemed a little bit anxious. And as we were just sitting very quietly, a lot of the devotees left at that time. And it was just Jean, myself, and Pratima for a little bit. And we could see his breathing was becoming so much, very, very peaceful. And he became like, seemingly detached. He also, before we came in, I heard he got a message from Shivaram Maharaj, and I think something changed after that. He responded to that like very, he became more peaceful. And Srila Prabhupada was one of those boxes next to his ear. Srila Prabhupada was singing, and we were sitting next to the bed, and more peaceful. And then whole Prana and his wife, and Tatiksha came back, and Dr. Mick, and then all these brahmacharis all of a sudden came in, and we all stood around the bed. And with Prabhupada singing, he became just more and more peaceful, and very deep, and very soft, and very gentle. And that's how he left. And you were like crying out of happiness that he was out of that suffering, because it was such a struggle that whole night and the whole time. So my understanding of when somebody leaves the body under such auspicious circumstances, you cannot just create, arrange such a passing. This is the accumulation of a life given to Krishna in devotional service. And I always find after somebody leaves, I find out so many things. I had no idea about all the services to Rath Yatra, and I just knew him get Terry the gardener, and the way from the way in and the way out. And I just knew he was always in the gardens, and that he was a really nice, friendly person. And then you hear all the depths of all the service they've done, and because of that service, he had such an auspicious passing. And it was my birthday on the 2nd of June, and I feel it was the greatest gift I could have gotten for my birthday, to be with Terry, because that passing was so auspicious that he must have been very dear to Krishna and to Srila Prabhupada. So I'd like to hear more of all the friends of Terry that know him much better than I did. So all glories to Terry, all glories to your service.
So apparently, Manoj Krishna was taught by his grandfather in the Sindh in India how to read clouds. And he saw it in the clouds that it's a very auspicious time to leave. And he saw it in the clouds, and he knew from reading the clouds that Terry had left. So I thought I'd mention that because he's not here to mention it himself. So it was a very special time that he left. And at one point during the treatment, he got very thin. He'd lost a lot of weight. So he's talking to me. And he says, you should be my agent. I said, I need someone, to go around the film studios. I can get a part as a concentration camp victim. So he's really thin.
That's a good part on him. we worked in the gardens, me, Terry, and Udo, very hard. And some people, they don't see us, they think we're not working or something. And then they were watching. There was one devotee, White Gunka, and he was watching George Harrison gardeners working, and they didn't stop working. And see, White Gunka bring some cake for them to put them aside, and at the end of the day, they didn't even touch the cake. Then White Gunka said, "Oh look, they didn't even touch the cake. Look how hard they're working." And then he said to Terry, and Terry says, "Well, you never offer us a cake." And that was like pretty sharp. I met Terry in 2001 in Poland, Polish Woodstock Festival, and I saw from far away, I saw the rock crowd came, and there was 2 people there. And I thought, oh, that's important service, and I just grabbed some water, bring them, and Terry was said thank you, and Tikshu said thank you. And I was watching them for a while, and watching how Tikshu and Terry work together. And Tikshu was really humble and just do whatever needs to be done, and Terry just keeps saying, do this, do that. And I was thinking, oh, Terry must be the boss then. And for many years I thought like that, and then when I found out, I couldn't believe it. I think she was the boss. But every day Terry tried to fix the world to be a better place. He did try hard. So, and he was a good friend as well.
Terry Key. I first met Terry about a little over 4 years ago when I became one of the gardeners at the manor, and he showed me the ropes on how to try and take care of the place, and and I'm always indebted to him for starting me off in the service. What I noticed about Terry is he was a very simple person. He never really asked for much for himself. He lived very simply on a boat for years without running water or electricity. And the things he did care about the most in his life, I think, was just like preaching and doing exciting things. He was a man of action, is what I got from him. That's when he felt the most alive. From traveling in India with Padayatra and with the Tikshu across Europe and doing the Rath Yatras, and here in the gardens. He always was trying to, do a good job and actually dedicate the majority of his life to doing good. And he didn't really care so much about accumulating too many things. It's like he never really liked to talk about, what time he came in or how much money he's getting paid or anything like that. It bothered him to kind of deal with those details. To him it was more about, making a difference and, doing good and for the movement and being a part of the front line. That's what I got from Terry. He was definitely a front line kind of guy. And I just feel I was fortunate to have his association. Sometimes we clashed, sometimes, he said we were a lot alike. So take that for what it is. But at the end of the day, I knew Terry was the kind of person, if you needed help, you could call him, and he was the kind of person who'd be there. If you broke down or something, he'd come and help you out, and no problem. He was that kind of friend. And yeah, I mean, there's so many stories. I just can't remember right now, but I really miss him. And I never expected him to be gone so soon. So, and when I heard he was sick, and I heard he probably didn't have long left. I was lamenting, but when I thought about his life, I just thought he'll be okay. He'll be okay. because he did so much service, and yeah, he cared very little for himself. You know, I was shocked that he was living on a barge for so many years with, you know, without even any heating or anything. You know, and yet still he was coming here and, you know, putting in the hours like everyone else. And yeah, I'm gonna miss him, and I'm sure he's in a better place because he was a good person.
We divide the festival up into different teams. We have one team is for the procession, one team for Trafalgar Square. So Damodar Krishna is the procession team leader. He organises all the stewards and everything else. And Terry, myself, and Damodar would meet quite often to discuss various things to do with the procession. So I'll hand it over now.
Hare Krishna. I'm actually used to speaking a lot. I do that for I don't need a mic. I do this for a vocation. So I won't go into any accounting or tax issues tonight. But just remember Bhakta Terry. Terry used to call me a blue-collared worker. For one simple reason, I would be working with them on the site. I cannot lift heavy things. I can't do many of the manual tasks that Titikshu, Terry and Lee, Narari, Rupa, Junanath would do just with the flick of their hands. I can't do that. But what would normally happen is every year, Terry would always come up with something new. For the Rath Carts assembly, at the assembly point, something innovative, something to reduce their times. He would always be telling us, this is how you do it. You can't even think it through. He would always tell us that. Then each time when we went to check out the route for the procession, especially this time when we were going to start at North Carriage Drive, on Park Lane, I don't know if many of you know about this, there's this nice Aston Martin showroom. When we went to check out the route, I had to pull him and Terry out of that showroom, outside the showroom, after about 15 minutes. So we have come to do a service here, not to look at cars and discuss engines. Both of them are very good with cars, engines and things like that. I can just about see it, enjoy watching a car, but that's about it. I wouldn't know how it runs. As far as Rath Yatra in London is concerned, a very valuable member for us, always did all the background work with Titikshu about 3 to 4 weeks prior to Rath Yatras. He would take out his time in the afternoon. He would start working at 6 in the morning, finish at about 2 o'clock, go to the Rath Yatra warehouse in Stevenage, and then work from about 2:33 with this South African here, Krishna Prabhu, till about 7:38 at night. They would always be doing some tasks on the Rath carts, maintenance work, this work, that work, which I would not understand anyway. But they always kept it going, and that's how I remember it. Terry Ki Jai Ho. I'm sorry I was late. I need to go down for service, I need to be there as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also didn't speak that much to Terry in recent years, but I used to see him and wave and maybe say a few words here and there, but the time I knew Terry more was in Ireland in the early 90s. He was at Inisrath Island, and he was also doing a lot of maintenance and gardening, kind of farming work. And there was himself and maybe 3 or 4 other devotees kind of labouring, looking after the grounds, the buildings, and Terry, Tribhuvan Prabhu loved Terry a lot. I remember at the time they had a lot of exchanges, but I think I remember one particular time when there's a similar point that you mentioned. Terry said you polish your head, or what was it? Starch your dhoti, or sorry as well. it doesn't make you like a devotee. So Tribuna said something similar in connection with Terry, that I don't know if Terry managed to stop smoking, but years ago he was smoking, and Tribuna didn't criticize him for it. He actually, one time he was saying that he was giving it as an example that we sometimes have bad habits or problems, devotees at different times. So he was saying that there was another devotee, he mentioned that, I won't say her name, but he said that she can't stop swearing. Somebody may know who it is. but and he said, and Terry, he can't give up smoking, but Krishna loves him. That's what Tribuna said. So he's making that point. And I think Terry was actually, like someone said, a very simple person, but not stupid. He was very philosophical, very on the ball, critical. Some people said he was grumpy, but you shouldn't speak ill of the dead. They're not here to defend themselves. So I think that detail was not important. He was always very kind-hearted and caring, and I think he had a heart of gold. So that's what I remember about Terry. Terry Prabhu ki jai.
I think I can always remember Terry from as long as I can remember, really. We always had Harry Bowl, and he always had a whole year, all right, but he was just a solid bloke, perhaps I could put it that way. And in recent years, he was Lady Subhadra's chariot driver, and of course I'm on a ride with Lady Subhadra, so I look after Lady Subhadra at the top. And I can say sometimes we wouldn't think twice because we knew that we were safe, if you like, in Terry's hands when he was riding her cart, when he was driving her cart, steering. There were no jerky brakes, there was nothing, it was always very smooth sailing. And then he'd always come up top and get a load of my shine. That's how I like to remember Terry.
Just a little bit like Gomati. I mean, Terry seemed to have been around here, sort of become part of the woodwork, really. Literally, and probably some of the woodwork he'd done himself as well. He was always a very popular devotee, and he was always kind. It was really strange to see. It's really hard now, driving down the drive in the morning, and you go to wave to Terry, and you think he's not there. He was excellent at maintenance, and he was excellent at gardening and keeping the grounds nicely. And all I can think is somewhere Krishna needed somebody to go and do that in that capacity, in a spiritual environment, and he's been called somewhere else to do it. And I think that his body, he'd given as much as he could, and I think Krishna took him at a time when he was in a very steady position, and hopefully he didn't suffer too much. And we do miss him, I have to say. Hare Krishna. Pleasure to know him.
No, Krishna Prasthapam today. Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami today. Namaste Saraswati Devi. Gaura Bhani Prachaya. Nirvasesha Sunyavani. Astija. Nishtar. Good, sure. Yeah, what I can remember of Terry, well, actually Matty was telling me he was very attached to Lady Sabaj, just nice as what I've just been saying. And what I can remember of Terry, a very dedicated Rathiatra driver. And I saw him at times, he stormed off the Rath Cup one time to Dixie was nearby, and he said, oh, I said, when are these guys ever going to get this right? and it reminded me of Jayananda Prabhu, also in America, godbrother. He was also very, he was a sweet, wonderful, sweet devotee. He's a Makelatop, I never met him. But I see some similarities there. And all I can say is, I actually sent a text to Smarahari when I heard that he wasn't doing so well, because I was hoping maybe Terry could get out of this thing, who knows. But I actually sent a text to Smarahari and I asked him to share it with the devotees. But actually I regard Terry as Bhakta Terry, actually. We should call him Bhakta Terry, because he was a Bhakta. Whether he was initiated or not, I'll be honest with you, I just come to the manor, and when I saw him working with the other gentleman's name, I can't remember now, they're very good friends, because he was telling me at the funeral that it used to be the minder for Bhagavan at one time when Bhagavan was here. And this gentleman was telling, when I used to see him and this gentleman working in the grounds, I used to think to myself, whoa, this is, I better shape up here, because it made me feel guilty actually, because I thought, I'm not doing anything right now, and there's nothing to stop me doing anything, and that's about it. All I can say is all glories to Bhakta Terry, and I just hope he's there with Krishna. That's all I can say. Adibo.
So there's one little thing just came to mind here. Terry wouldn't tolerate any nonsense. If he thought there was some nonsense going on, he'd tell you. So one time we were in Paris doing Rathiatra there, and it really rained. The clouds, I never seen anything like it, really heavy rain. And the deities there didn't have a proper canopy or anything. And so someone had given the pujaris umbrellas. And the pujaris were holding the umbrellas over themselves, and the deities were just getting wet. And Terry screamed at them, these umbrellas, they're meant for the deity, you hold them over the deity, you're just holding them over yourselves, he really got on their cases. And that kind of thing, he wouldn't tolerate any nonsense. So if he thought there was something going on which was wasting precious Lakshmi or wasting time, he never wasted any time. He gave himself 100% to whatever he did, and that is a glorious thing in itself. So, is there anyone else who'd like to say anything? Udo, you got
just wanted to say a quick thing real quick. Like every year while I was in the gardens, Terry always made sure that all the mechanics who fixed the mowers and all the people on the outside who helped us, he always made sure at the end of the year that they got a care package of like samosas and sweets, and he always made sure to remind me, let's make sure and get them like 20 samosas, and I just remember that like Terry was really into that sort of preaching as well, just trying to share prasadam and give people a good impression about the devotees and the movement. He always thought that was really important. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that.
Okay, very nice, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Sometimes I think that we get so wrapped up in our principles that we miss the beauty in people sometimes. And I think Terry is one of those beautiful people of our movement. It's not me. It's not me that's removed.
No, but it's close to it.
Is it? I'll put it off. I'll just put it all off. So, they're all off now. I was on the Bhakta program with Terry. We joined together, Chaitanya College, and he's Bhakta Terry, I was Bhakta George. A few people are still from that Bhakta program. There are a few, very few. Abai, who became a sannyasi, he did better than the two of us. And the other Bhakta George, who's up in Scotland now, running the temple up there. Terry, really, my memory is completely short. I remember a lot of smiles, a lot of laughs, a lot of serious moments, and Terry getting upset quite quickly. Not without reason. Not without reason. With very substantial reason. I think you'd probably get a little bit upset and you'd walk away from it before it got any further. A remarkable gentleman. As the years went by, I think, today I was in central London, I was in LSE, the university. I was sitting in the Department of Inform, which they study religions, new religious movements, cults and sects, and the people were all there. They were kind of hosting us today. We spoke with them. And there's a book, the professor had authored a book called New Religious Movements, and they handed me a copy of it. It was from a few years ago. And I looked at the cover and it had like the Moonies, and then it had somebody else, and then it had, I think it was Lokabandhu like this. You know, you get those pictures. Lokabandhu like this, and Shamasundar looking very young. And then I noticed Terry with a big like mooch, like a big moustache. Sorry, coming down like this. I thought, oh my God, Terry, there you are. Who would have expected that? And I think that was pretty summed up Terry's. What would you say? He's always been here. He's always been here. I mean, we've all seen a lot of people who got fired up, came to Mangalarti for a few years, chanted 16 rounds, got in everyone's cases, and we don't know where any of these people are now, isn't it? And the ones that, the dark horses, are the ones that you think are, well, are they really following the principles? The question's always in all of our minds, but they continue on in their service to Krishna, embracing what they are as a person. But for many years, I think it'd be extremely difficult to be a person in our movement who wasn't following all of, at least externally, following all the, the standard of Mangalarti. Those things were all drilled into our heads. And so to actually exist and remain friends over years of such a movement, I'd imagine that'd be probably more challenging than being in the movement itself. But he's always there. He never went far. I don't know, he went away with his friends sometime, I think maybe went to Spain or something. But after every so often, you would always see Terry. He'd always be here, whether he was doing the maintenance, then he got involved in the gardens. And then, I remember, and these are not really, I don't know what's spiritual, what's not spiritual these days, but these are perhaps not strictly spiritual things I'm remembering, but I remember not that long ago, he kind of really took a shine to a young lady. And it was like all happening for him, and I remember him talking to me at quite a pace at that time. And literally he was approaching it with such a sense of tremendous responsibility and planning, making all the plans for this lady, and I think she had a daughter, she had a child or something like that, and he was like, he started to plan it all in his mind. I don't even know if it was, for real or what. He was, and then it didn't even work out, but he was still trying to manage something for the child of that person and speaking to me about it rigorously. That became the important thing for him. The responsibility that he had exhibited, that he had felt, and then that even though the interest wasn't there, sustained interest wasn't there from the other person, he still continued on out of a complete sense of human responsibility. And I think I really admired that about him. Sometimes he used to have a tough time here because I would usually arrive at the temple in the morning about 6 o'clock or 7, I think. That's the kind of time Terry would be out there on the... Yeah, and you'd kind of see him and go, "Hey Terry," and then he'd stop that thing and jump off it and come running over the field to to get stuff off his chest maybe, or to talk about something. And because I have a horticultural background, he'd want to talk to me about the grounds and all the rest of it. And so I would, you know, that was the kind of time when we meet a lot coming and going. But in my last exchange with Terry, it was again, it was a very meaningful one for me, in a simple sense. And I was just driving into the temple, and he was driving out. It wasn't so long ago. He was driving out, and as I was coming in from the traffic light, he was coming from his traffic light there, and as we were just about there, he was just sitting like this in the car, you know. He's probably just finally got out of the temple. He's just having a puff. And then he turned around and he saw me. And I thought, don't do that, you know. I mean, not don't smoke, but don't think I'm that kind of person. So when I came into the temple, I drove into the car park, and then I was around, and I saw him a bit later, and he said, oh, by the way, sorry about that. And I became slightly angered by it. I said, don't sorry about, he was referring to him smoking. I said, don't sorry about that before me. What do you think I am? I'm not here to judge you in your life, Terry. I'm not the judgmental type either. And I certainly do not consider a person's human worth or spiritual value based upon whether they have a fag or not. It's completely besides the point. So I said, I don't care it doesn't make any difference to my life or your life whatsoever. I don't care, Terry, don't even mention it. And I do feel very strongly about that, because I feel that in the spirit and the mood of Chaitanya Dev, our founder, ultimate founder, he quoted a very simple verse, and it's one that I always feel great solace in. And this is in Bengali. It says, Ishwar Sabhav Bhaktera Nalaya Aparad. That the very Sabhav, or the temperament of God, is towards devotees. Nalaya Aparad. He doesn't consider the offences. He doesn't consider these things. Now I know that Brahmanical orthodoxies have written encyclopedias on all the things you should be doing and all the things we shouldn't do. But in Chaitanya's life and in his teaching, he was a reformer, a great reformer. And he taught that the mentality of divinity, or Krishna, or God, towards those who try to devote themselves is nalaya parad. He doesn't see the fault in the way a judgmental member of the human species would see it. Nalaya parad. Now here's the next point, to further emphasize it. Alpa seva. Alpa, you know, when they're serving you prasad, they say alpa. When it comes to the rice in Bengal, you have to say alpa. It means a little. Very little. Alpa seva. A little service in the direction of Krishna. Alpa seva bahumani. Krishna makes a big deal for that. He'll beat a drum for that. The little service. Little service. Alpa seva bahumani atma paryanta prasad. And for that little seva, little service in life, he gives himself as the prasad. He gives himself as the grace, as the mercy. He gives himself in reciprocation. And so, when the very essential quality of a person is devotion, whether they go this, like this, like this, like this, the very continuum, this very sustainable element of their very being is that they want to just try to do the best with whatever they can in the place where they feel it means the most. I would say he succeeded very well in doing that. And perhaps better than some of us who assume just because we manage these principal things that we're a cut above the rest. So, Bhakta Terry, Prabhu,
One thing about Terry was his practicality. We just moved into a new warehouse where we was building. I was actually refurbishing Jagannath's cart, Subhadra's cart. And we'd got these big warehouse where we could fit 2 carts at a time. And it used to belong to an old wood turning shop or something. There were carpenters or something like that. And they had these really expensive pieces of plywood. I don't know, they were like £30 a piece or something. And Terry just threw them all over the floor. He says, look at that. We could have used that for decking and stuff like that. His main concern was that your feet don't get cold in winter because it insulates. So there was a bit of a controversy there. Well, we don't need it, we just wear extra socks. And Terry says, no, this is staying there. And until to this day, it's still there. It's waterlogged and puffed up, and we're tripping over it every 5 minutes. But that was Terry, practicality. Another one, I used to do a bit of gardening. I used to do composting a few years ago. And they used to have these bright 20 miles an hour signs on the driveway. And Terry mentioned something. I was busy chugging along with him on the tractor. I had a little red one, he had a green one, like two little boys, you know, going down the road. And then we stopped and we were discussing how we can make this roadway interesting to make people slow down. And he suggested we put little cutouts with, again, plywood. He had this affiliation with plywood. He says, if we cut little rabbits out and little squirrels and paint them up so the children go yay when they go down the road and they slow down to watch them, that'll control the traffic. And I says, it'll look like Disneyland. He says, well, the manor is like Disneyland. I said, well, there I am defeated, you know. So anyway, I never got the opportunity to actually go and see Terry in hospital, but I did get a random phone call. I mean, me and Terry, we had a bit of a, how can I say?
Shall I say it?
Huh?
I would say it.
We used to rub each other up the wrong way sometimes, but we loved each other. Well, I like, you know, I'm sitting here now. Yeah, we're like, yeah, something like that. And you made me forget what I was going to say now.
Random phone call.
Random phone call, yeah. I was doing, I hope there's no one here from the job centre, I was doing a job on the side. And I get this random phone call, and the name didn't come up. So I answered. He says, Toshta! I'm like, yeah? He says, it's Tell. So I, Tell who? He said, Terry Robbins. And I had this image in my head that Terry was lying, emaciated in bed, not able to move. I hadn't seen him. And, you know, through the information I was getting from Prabhu, that's what I thought. And he was talking, oh yeah, I'm getting this chemo, I'm really up there, I'm going for it, I'm really feeling great. And I was like, okay, listen, I can't come and see you because I'm working, I'm quite far away. I was in Gaydon. And so I couldn't come and see him. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll text you and, you know, see if we can make an arrangement. Anyway, the next week, I asked Prabhu if I could go and see Terry, and apparently he wasn't seeing anybody. So, unfortunately, I didn't get to see him. But anyway, yeah, I've got a lot of nice memories of Terry. I've got a lot of, you know, I won't mention them. I rather remember the good things that we had together. Thanks, Terry.
Okay, Jean.
One of the biggest things, it's been lovely to hear what you've all said, and the biggest thing that comes to mind is that I don't know that he knew that how everybody felt about him. And that's such a shame that when he went into hospital, well, when he retired, he said, 30 years I've been at the manor and people won't even speak to you. So, you know, you just, now I do realise that sometimes you get what you give off, and sometimes he did have a face that was perhaps not the happiest, or that you could get, you know, be in touch with him. But when he was ill, he was in tears at one point because so many of you were coming in, wanting to know how he was. And I said, that's one of the best things of this illness, that you know how people think about you. And he was just so surprised at so many people concerned for him. It did all happen very quickly, and I mean, he was joking at the point because they gave him 2 weeks to live, actually, or less. And then they said they could do the chemo, and it would take a month to do the chemo. And he joked and said, well, at least I get a month then, not 2 weeks. So that's why we decided that it would be a good idea to try the chemo. But he was a loner. He was a very private person. And I don't think he had any idea what all that meant, being in hospital and every minute you've got somebody doing bloods, giving you medicines. He'd got tubes coming out of both arms and in his chest. And he had 6 weeks from the day he went in there of having an oxygen mask on, which made it very, very difficult, because if he took it off to talk, he couldn't talk, but to talk with it on, you couldn't really understand what he was saying. So he got very frustrated with that, but didn't moan a great deal. I must admit, he was very good, considering that he'd never been ill. He'd never had any of this messing about that he had to go through, but he also didn't really have any idea of what all this meant. And to be a private person, and then unfortunately with chemo he would be in rather a state bodily, he would have to be washed, etc. There was no privacy, and he coped with it really, really well. But then when he got the chemo, he had 10 days, which is how long the chemo took, and he was like his old self.
Yeah.
He would chat, that's what you were talking about. He would phone me up 2 or 3 times a day, and it would be, so full of everything. He was doing so well. But then as soon as the chemo stopped, he went, unfortunately, it kills all the good things as well as the bad. And then he got the bowel problem, and that really took him down. And he then didn't want to have anybody around. I mean, I was there, obviously, but he just didn't want to. He felt that if people came, he would have to entertain, and he couldn't. He just hadn't got the energies to do that sort of thing. But he coped so well, and we had many jokes about him. If I would go, I'd say, look, now don't cause any problems, no going out tonight. And he'd say, well, no, I was thinking I might go to the disco, but not, So he was very good, and he put up with a lot of stuff, but it wasn't to be, and it was quite awful at the end. I'd expected him to be sort of drifting away a bit, and Titichu and Jan came the day before he passed, and we thought he was going to go then, but he didn't, and he hung on, but then he started fighting it, and we had a whole day from 5 o'clock in the morning. In fact, I got you in at 7 o'clock tonight, yet again, and because I just got so worried, because he was fighting going, and 4 times they had to come and give him sedation, because it was like he just was scared, I don't know. And at one point I thought, he doesn't want to be Hare Krishna. Stop, because we had this chanting thing going for 18 hours. Oh. And at one time it was quite a lot, wasn't it, at one point? But anyway, and I said to Titichu, I think we've got to stop the chanting for a minute, because I don't think he wants to be a Hare Krishna, and I've done this wrong. I shouldn't have let him go like this. Perhaps I should have done it in a different way. But it just went right. When everybody came in and you were chanting, and he just went quiet, and it was right. And it was such a relief that he had gone so peacefully and in the right way. But it was a difficult time at that point. But so he would have loved to have known all of this, and let's hope that somehow in the spiritual world that he knows that how all of you felt, and how, well, I think he knew how I felt, but I sincerely hope so. So we'll all miss him very much, and he gave a lot to other people, but his way, so you did have to sort of accept how he was. But he was a lovely brother to have, and a lot of good memories, and I think that's what we've got to go on, the good things. He had this flat, when his barge sunk, he'd been going on for about a year. I really need to get out of this, because it had got no facilities or anything, and he had this flat in Chorley Wood that he absolutely loved, and it was his first real home, apart from coming sort of to me. It was, and he had knickknacks, all the the Hare Krishna type things, and pictures that you had done for him, and he loved it. He was so happy there, and he only had a year. And I sometimes I think, why did that happen? And he'd only got the year. But I try and say he did have that year. Yes. He could have still been on this barge and had nothing, and he's had this great time of having the year there and having all of you as friends. So
can I just mention something? When he got the flat, I met him in the grounds, and he says, "I've got this flat, and guess what? I'm the youngest one."
He is. He was. Yes, absolutely. And he's made such a thing with them that they are absolutely upset. They can't believe that he's not going back there, and that's after a year of being there. So he did have a lot to give, and he had a horrible upbringing. We weren't good. Well, he and I were fine, but but he survived all that and still had a lot to live. So thank you very much for all of your thoughts.
Thank you.
Okay. So, at the crematorium, he felt of Titichu and Jan, because I can't remember your other name, I'm sorry.
Jan's fine.
He felt that they were family, and always on his birthday, because I've cooked for years, but I've now stopped cooking. So you could come to me if you have anything on toast, but anything else, you go somewhere. I used to say, go to Titichu's and Jan's if you want a meal. And they did, and always celebrated his birthday. Jan always did him a cake, and he felt that you were the other part of his family. So thank you very much.
Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Bhakta Terry Prabhu ki jai.